In this video, we will be doing some stamping, a little bit of ink blending, and so much more. Hi, this is Anna from Crafty Anna Studio. Welcome to my channel. I will be creating these 2-for-1 cards using different techniques. Hopefully, you will pick up some tips on how to get the most out of your crafty supplies. I will start off by creating some backgrounds. I mounted this cling stamp from Hero Arts called Heart-Shaped Daisies onto my stamping tool. I placed a piece of white cardstock on top of a sticky mat to hold it in place. I used the sticky mat grid as a guide for the placement. I'll be using white unicorn ink to stamp out the pattern. I'm actually going to heat emboss this panel with white embossing powder. You can use this ink as it is a pigment ink, but you can also use embossing ink. I actually haven't re-inked my embossing ink pad, that's why I'm using this. I closed the door of my stamping tool and pressed down firmly using this tool I made out of a cover of a candle. This gives me more even pressure throughout the stamp. You can see how this ink remains wet enough for the embossing powder to stick. Next, I sprinkle some white detail embossing powder generously all over the panel. Then I take a preheated heat tool and start at the back before moving it to the front. Here's the finished heat embossed panel. I will set this aside while I work on more backgrounds. For the background of my second card, I will use these ink cubes from the Sunshine set of reactive inks, Fruit Punch, Creamsicle, and Lemon Drop. I'll also be using this blending brush. I will place another piece of cardstock onto the sticky mat. Then, I take the lightest color, Lemon Drop, and gently tap it onto the upper third part of the stamp. Then I take the second color, Creamsicle, and tap it on at the middle, taking care not to overlap on the lighter color so as not to contaminate the stamp. Then I take the darkest color, Fruit Punch, and tap it onto the lower half, also taking care not to overlap with the orange color. Next, I use the blending brush and tap it gently where the two colors meet each other. This allows the colors to blend seamlessly. I close the door of the stamping tool, then use this tool to press down onto the stamp to make sure the ink transfers as evenly as possible. I've seen a lot of these crafters use a similar tool to this one, so I decided to make my own. This is the background I will use for my second card. Now there's a little bit of ink left over in the stamp and it would be such a shame to let it go to waste. I place another cardstock panel aligning it using the grid lines. Then I take a spray bottle filled with clean clear water and mist the stamp to reactivate the inks. I closed the door of the stamping tool and once again pressed firmly. This time I just used my fingers and palm. Look how much ink was left. The water reacting with the ink gave it a watercolor look. Let's see if there's any ink left. I sprayed it once again. And voila! It's more subtle, but definitely can be used as a background for a nice floral as a focal image. Now back to the heat embossed panel. I took a striped stencil from Hero Arts and I'll do some ink blending with it. First, I will tape the panel down onto the back of the stencil with some washi tape. I'll tape it on both sides. This will help keep the stencil in place. Then I'll flip it to the front and tape the stencil onto the mat on all sides. It'll be easier to ink blend without worrying about the stencil shifting. I will use the same colors I used to ink blend the stamp earlier. I start with Lemon Drop ink. Using the blending brush, I start by applying color to the top 1/3 of the panel. If the stencil shifts a little, I use my fingers to hold it down. Then I clean my brush between colors. Next, I blend in creamsicle onto the middle of the panel. As I blend it, I overlap the color with a lemon drop to create a smooth transition between the colors. Then lastly, I use fruit punch for the bottom area, also blending it in with a creamsicle. I repeat until I'm satisfied with the intensity of the colors. And of course, I clean off my brush in between. I remove the stencil gently and will set it aside for now. There is still a lot of inks left over on the stencil, so I will use that to create yet another background. I sprayed the stencil with a light mist of water, then placed a piece of cardstock right on top, then took a microfiber cloth and laid it on top and pressed down gently, taking care not to make the cardstock shift. I lift it up, and there, this is what I will use as the base to my first card. Speaking of the first card, I took the panel I had ink blended earlier and I will blend in some leftover ink from my blending brush. This just makes the lines look more subtle and not as stark white. Then I will use one of the heart dies from the Infinity Heart die set to cut out an opening in front. I will just eyeball the placement using the ink blended lines as a guide to make sure everything is even. After die cutting an opening, I will use a trimmer to trim all sides of the panel to 1/4 of an inch smaller on all sides. I will set aside this die cut heart for the second card. I will add a piece of vellum to the back side of the panel, just small enough to cover the opening. I use vellum instead of clear acetate just to create a different look and to match the second card, which I will show you later. Off camera, I added foam tape to the back of the panel, removed the release paper, and then will adhere it to the stripy base. For the sentiment You Want My Heart, this is from the Your Mind stamp and die set from Hero Arts. Then I take a scrap piece of white cardstock and place it on a mini Misty. I use this Misty for small jobs like sentiments or simple stamping. I use the same colors, lemon drop, creamsicle, and fruit punch, and add them to the stamp the same way I did with the background stamp. Starting with lemon drop at the top, then stamp, then I will add creamsicle to the middle area, use the blending brush to soften the transition, then stamp. Finally, fruit punch, using the blending brush once again to soften. I will repeat this until I get the desired intensity of color. Then I will use the coordinating die to cut out the sentiment. Off camera, I added more layers to the sentiment to create some dimension. I then added it to the middle of the heart opening with liquid glue. For the final touch, I will embellish it with red iridescent gems that came in one of the My Monthly Hero kits before adhering it on a side folding card base. If you're finding this video helpful so far, I would really appreciate it if you could like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it. Thanks! is what the finished card looks like. For the second card of the 2-for-1, I will create an infinity shaker card. I think that's what it's called. Usually acetate is used to create this interactive card, but I will do something a little different. I will use vellum instead. First, I will cut a piece of vellum about ½ an inch bigger than the A2 panel. Then I miter each of the corners at an angle. Keeping the cardstock panel in place with my fingers, I fold in the two sides and the bottom. I will keep the top open so I can pour in the sequins for the shaker part of the card. I use liquid glue to adhere the vellum to the card panel. I use gold sequins for the shaker element as it goes really well with the color scheme of the card. This pink spoon I'm using is actually from an ice cream shop. The size is just perfect to scoop embellishments. After adding the sequins, I sealed the top with liquid glue. The sentiment on this heat embossed heart is from a new product offering from Hero Arts called Hero Transfers or Rub-ons. It's super easy to use and it's perfect if you need to add a sentiment to the card fairly quickly. And it comes with a popsicle stick. First, I cut around the sentiment LOVE with the backing paper still attached. Then I remove the backing paper and put it down gently on the area where I want the sentiment to be placed. Because the surface is uneven due to the embossing, I will use the sharp edge of a scoring tool to rub onto the surface, lifting and checking as I go along to make sure the letters transfer seamlessly. After placing the sentiment, I will adhere the heart to the middle of the shaker panel with liquid glue, before adhering it to a side fold card base. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. If you're interested in any of the Hero Arts products I used in this video, I have it linked in the video description below. I have full list of supplies on my blog post, which is also listed below. Thank you so much for watching. Till next time, bye!